I'm predicting Cocktail Twins, The Cure,
No.
or The Bunnymen.
No, none of that.
I can't do this thread. Why is that, Stevie? Why is that? And funnily enough, I met her at a car boot sale. So didn't come back and ran off with somebody else. I remember at the cinema, she kind of molested me. One of those seaside towns that they forgot to bomb. Just completely out of touch with music. What do you mean I can't mention it? Of course I can mention it. What do you say? What do you say?
No, so you're completely wrong. You got it completely wrong. It's really what I should title it is 10 albums I could never have listened to the most.
Yeah.
But some I did.
Okay, so 10 records I can't actually listen to the most. Why is that, Stevie? Why is that? Because I stopped listening to music, as you know, and had a big gap from the late 80s onwards. So 90s, not much, and started again in the 2010s. So what I thought I'd do is I'd go through some of the ones where over the years they've been notable exceptions, whether I've kind of like listened to them or where I've kind of been listening to them the most during that period of time. Okay, so first up, it's 1989 or 1990, about that sort of time, and I'm listening to this. Yes, that's right. It's not an LP. It's a Sony Walkman. And what I used to do is I listened to this one, New Order's Technique. I had a sort of pen friend who was became a kind of more than a pen friend in Japan, and this album, kind of every track on it seemed to sort of talk to me. So what I would do is listen to New Order's Technique on this, riding home on my bike, and I actually still have the original Walkman. And I think if I try hard, I'll get a picture of the bike. Why? I don't know, but there we are. So first up, it's New Order's Technique. That was a go-to album at the time. Okay, so next up we're actually in Japan, and this was, I think, let me have a look at my notes. So that was 1991, or sort of 89, 1991, and I only had three things. So I had the first LP by Electronic. It was a combination of Pet Shop Boys and New Order. The eponymously named Electronic. I haven't got that CD, but I had a CD player, and also I had I think a tape of Pet Shop Boys Actually, and I like that so much I bought a tape of their Behaviour, and I think I've got both in my vinyl now. And I also had this, and this was the only thing, and again I played it on my Sony Walkman. Sony Tapeman, whatever it is. So I had a mixtape. I don't know if you can see the track listing there. I think it's Cocteau Twins, and let me show you the track listing. So that was kind of like all I carried with me, and then I had an Electronic CD and Pet Shop Boys. And with the Pet Shop Boys, I wasn't really into them at all, but I did get a good understanding. I think a better understanding of their brilliance at songwriting, and also how good a songwriter Bernard Sumner was. So tracks like Being Boring and How Can You Expect to Be Taken Seriously, but Being Boring was one of my all-time Pet Shop Boys favourite tracks. So we kind of left the mixtapes behind and had those two. So I'm going to count that as the CD and the tape as number 2 and 3 sort of go-to albums at the time. So number 4 album over the years that was a go-to, where I listened to it all the time. Again, this is a girlfriend, but this is more at art college, and funnily enough I met her at a car boot sale, and this was a French girl who will remain nameless, and I visited her in St Etienne, and there were two CDs that we used to listen to all the time. A favourite of hers, which at the time became a favourite of mine. So this is Steamer Nordenstam, and here's a track listing off that. So when Debbie gets back from Texas, Little Star is one remember, and she closed her eyes. So it's quite a somber, sort of tweaky singer, but it was quite a, quite good for the time, and we were sort of having our relations. And the other LP, because she lived near Lyon and St Etienne. So this was a bit after art college. And I was broke, but I got the coach to St Etienne and took with me Fox Bass Alpha by St Etienne. So Fox Bass Alpha and Stina Nordenstam we used to listen to a lot. So I'm gonna call that. I'm gonna just give that 1. So that's number 4. Unfortunately, she kind of ran off. When I went back to art college, she came back, then went back to France, then didn't come back and ran off with somebody else. So I'll get my revenge. Let's show a picture of a pussy. Okay, so that's number 4. And again, next up is another one from art college. I was seeing a very nice Italian lady, although she was quite obsessive, I had to say. We went to see a film, and it was quite a good film, and we both kind of fell in love with the soundtrack. And I remember at the cinema she kind of molested me. Why? Because she was a nymphomaniac. So we both sort of liked the film, and that was the soundtrack to the film Piano by Michael Nyman. Quite a good film, and that was on recently, and so I watched it. And whilst the film was sort of okay, it's quite very good sort of on location film in New Zealand. It's really the music soundtrack that makes the film, and also I think I bought a couple of other Michael Nymans, but I got a soft spot for that. So that was a go-to with her, but unfortunately the relationship had to end because. Anyway, less on that. So that's another art college one. So that's number 5. We're up to 5. So again, not much going on in music, and left art college, and actually did a stint as a mature student, doing a couple of degrees and what have you. But I was with a nice lady in a sort of British seaside town where I used to live, one of those seaside towns that they forgot to bomb. And again, picked up another CD that we used to listen to together all the time, and that was Hobo Talk, Beauty in Madness. And there's the track listing. I used to really like this one. Notable tracks: Walks With Me, I've Seen Some Things, and Beauty in Madness. So that's Beauty in Madness by Hobo Talk. So that's coming in. So we're up to number 6. So at this stage, I'll just do a quick notable one, because this was how just completely out of touch with music I was. So I had a holiday in 1996, and I didn't have another holiday for 10 years until 2006. And I actually went around New Zealand in a camper van, which was quite good. And there was a kind of old record shop, and I think that kind of got my interest. But I bought a couple of CDs, and I saw this for sale, and I kind of wondered what it was. I didn't, even though I used to love New Order, I didn't actually realise it was a New Order CD. So I actually got that, and so New Order, Get Ready. You'll know the track listing on that. But so that's another notable mention of just how out of touch I was. But one go-to sort of record I always listen to all the way through, even though I'm streaming at the moment, I should say, and that's this one, Mystery de Bois Bulgari, and I had this tape with me on my travels, and I've always listened to that. Now I've got the vinyl, and I've got the first LP, which is also a go-to album, and recently got the other one. Actually, the one I got was the second one, but I'd never seen the first one. Le Mystère de Bulgarie, Bulgarian Mystery Voices. So that's coming in at number 7. So some other notables, sort of knocking around, sort of art college. I was always listening to David Sylvian, Brilliant Trees, like that, and also Secrets of the Beehives. but they weren't necessarily go-to, but they were keeping my interest in. And then I had a bit of a flirtation with Belle and Sebastian, so quite like theirs. They weren't go-to albums, but they kind of kept me in touch. Okay, so even though I haven't got the record set up yet, and I've been streaming, so one album that has always been a go-to album, and this kind of started sort of quite late when I started getting my eye back in the 2010s. Started buying the odd record online, bought a few copies of a famous record. But this, I saw this, I was listening to it online, I thought, you know what, I'm going to buy the album, and I had a little record player then. So this is always a go-to album, whether it's streaming or playing, and it's Stevie Span. And this for me is their best album. I think it's the first album, Hark the Village Wait. And this is 1970. So much so, when I saw another copy, different text on that one. So I think that's the earlier one, and maybe that's a repress. So track listing is there. Now this is kind of like early British folk, but it's kind of like I think they discovered. Let's just go through the band. Tim Hart, vocals, electric guitar, Ashley Hutchings, bass, Maddie Pryor, of course, needs no introduction, and Gay Woods and Terry Woods, so the classic early lineup of Stevie Span. What is early folk, or sort of, very oldie worldy folk, classical old English folk, whatever you want to call it. But it was, I seem to remember reading that they had found the folk songs lyrics, so it was their interpretation of ye olde worldy folk. But they did it so well. It's such a good album. That's always a go-to album. The Blacksmith, Fisherman's Wife, Black-Legged Miner, Dark-Eyed Sailor, Copsewood Fair, All Things Are Quiet, My Johnny Was a Shoemaker. So all harking back to those difficult sort of peasant times, working 7 days a week for a pittance. So probably I think their best album. It's certainly a fond favourite of mine. So it's Stevie Span, Heart of the Village Wait. So that's my number 8. So a couple of other notables along the years sort of kept my interest, even though I was disinterested, sort of kept my interest in. I sort of buy things like Suede, listen to that a lot. And one band that can't be ignored, absolutely brilliant band, and that's British Sea Power. They call themselves Sea Power now, but I'm always going to call themselves British Sea Power because of Brexit. So standout tracks here are Remember Me, Fear of Drowning, and Carry On. They're sort of the classic hits, so to speak, but absolutely wonderful band, British Sea Power, and that kind of rekindled a lot of interest in me as sort of 2010, so I was catching up on their back catalogue. But yeah, British Sea Power. So where are we? So what's coming in at number 9? So coming in at number 9 might surprise you, another go-to album, probably an album you wouldn't guess. It is, of course, the Four and Only Seekers, or the Seekers, whichever you prefer, the Four Seekers. And this is, what's it called? Hide and Seekers. So this is on Music for Pleasure. You'll see this in every charity shop. Now, why, as a track listing, why has he picked this? I've picked this because I always like listening to this because it reminds me of my mother, who used to put this on, and I can, whenever I hear sort of Morning Town Ride, I can always picture that scene sort of in the 70s in our old house. So that's always been a staunch favourite throughout the years. But that surprised you. So that's number 9. So what is number 10? So another go-to album, an album where I don't necessarily listen to it all the time, but when I do, I will listen to it all the way through, and you've got to be in the mood. Perhaps a couple of other notables along the way. I really liked Apollo by Brian Eno, so I used to relax, put that on in bed and relax to that a lot. And getting interested in folk. I sort of got interested in Neil Young. So, and that really, I think Neil Young made me more interested in Bob Dylan. So a couple of other notables, but what would you say would be my number 10? What do you mean I can't mention it? Of course I can mention it. It's my channel. What do you say? What do you say? Well, how about you're for it? Yeah, you're for it. So what? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us. So we've got 2 for, 2 against. What you saying? Your voice is in my head. I'm not schizophrenic. Okay, it is, of course. No, I can't show it. I can't stop the video.
So I'm guessing you're going to show Quadrophenia then.
No,